Radha Madhav Prabhu, we can't hear you and you're quite frozen.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Prabhuji will just try to join in a separate network. Thank you so much for coming. We'll just fix this shortly.
Hare Krishna. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, much better.
Thank you. Thank you. I am very sorry for the network problem. So let's begin our today's program. First of all, we would like to welcome Her Grace Citi-sakti Devi Mataji and all the other devotees from all over the world. We enthusiastically welcome everyone. And before we start, we would like to, most of us do not know you, Mataji. And personally, I am seeing you first time. So not so much. I do not know you so much personally, but whatever I know, I would like to share with the devotees so that we can open our heart, gladden it to hear the great message from you about the pure devotee. So basically, the most important thing about Mataji is that she was the one devotee with Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. In his last 5 months, Mataji was one of the secretaries and caregiver to Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, along with 7 more devotees, we guess, as you were told by His Grace Mahajan Prabhu. And that is the greatest asset for the younger devotees and for the whole world to have these devotees who have witnessed these pastimes of Srila Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, not just witnessed, they have lived with their Guru, they have seen, watched, touched everything. I was just remembering about Sanjaya in Mahabharata. Like Sanjaya was seeing the Mahabharata, listening Bhagavad Gita from Lord Krishna, who was giving message to Arjuna. Because of Sanjaya, it was possible now for all of us to hear and read the Bhagavad Gita. Because he was the one who was telling everything, and later is what it was all came into writing. So that is one of the most wonderful contribution going to be in Mataji's life for the whole world. From last 30 years, Mataji is practicing Krishna consciousness, and she is by profession medical doctor, psychiatrist, and Mataji is based in England, UK, and trying to preach the message of Krishna consciousness, blending with her profession of doctor by curing the mental disease, mental illness with Krishna consciousness to thousands and thousands and millions of people online and offline. And so that is what we appreciate, and I personally know about Mataji, but more and more we will know the real personality of Mataji when we are going to hear from the person. It is same like when Sukadeva Goswami appeared, nobody knew. Everybody was thinking that he's a dumb man, he is some mad person. But when he spoke about the message of Godhead, then everybody was wonderstruck, including his father Vyasdev and the great grandfather Narad Muni. So the real thing is when we hear from a sadhu or a sadhvi. So we are extremely grateful and thankful to Mataji for being agree, not just being agreeing. Mataji was very enthusiastic, and we are also same enthusiastic to hear from Mataji about her spiritual master, and maybe he is the one of the role model and Acarya for the whole world. Srila Bhakti Maharaj writes in one of his foreword to one devotee, Her Grace Ladini Mataji, he says that if we do not have current examples of pure devotees, current example of the great warriors, generals, then we will lose our faith in the process of bhakti. So Srila Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, Srila B.T. Swami, the great dancer, as Srila Prabhupada says, the black dancing Chaitanya, a wonderful leader, a visionary, lover and dear to all. We have such a devotee, we would like to hear about him, to imbibe these qualities in our life and to also follow his footsteps and to able to please him and please our spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada. So Mataji, thank you very much once again. We welcome you, and you please take us to the same place where you were for the 5-6 months with Maharaj, and be able to feel that. And you are free to speak any way you like. There's no foundation. Free from the speak from the heart. And after that, in the next session, we will also request to the devotees to have more interaction. In this session, we will hear from you. In next session, we will keep both things, hearing from you, and also we will have interaction with the devotees. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Thank you, Radhamada Prabhu. Thank you to all the wonderful devotees who are here. And thank you for glorifying His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and actually simultaneously Srila Prabhupada and Guru Tattva and Krishna by holding such events. It's a special year. This is the year of the 20th anniversary of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's disappearance. I don't know where the last 20 years have gone. And before I get into this, I think let's do Mangalarchanam and invoke his blessings as well as the blessings of the Acharyas, because quite frankly, even if you gave me 24 hours to speak or 100 days to speak, I don't think I'd be able to say enough. I would have more to say. and I wouldn't be able to still do justice to how wonderful he is. But I pray by your mercy and the mercy of the Acharyas that something comes through that is nourishing and transformational for your spiritual life. So please join me in chanting Mangalarchanam. Om Agyanti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagna Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sarvadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, Prabhu, I know you requested me to just speak freely for today, and I don't have a doubt that I'll be able to do that. But if there is anything, maybe I will leave some time at the end. If devotees want to explore anything else a little bit more, then you can. Because I think when there's a gap between sessions, sometimes people forget what was spoken about in the last one. So maybe we can do a little bit of both in both sessions. So understanding anyone is not easy. Understanding pure devotees is even more difficult because they're not easy to recognize. Radha Madhav Prabhu spoke about Shukadev Goswami, how he was, actually seen as a madman, right? This is in Bhagavatam, it actually says this, that children were giggling and, women were following him and, young girls and, and others were treating him like a madman or making a mockery of him. And it took someone like Parikshit Maharaj to recognize the exalted qualities of Shukadev Goswami beyond his avadhut appearance. Pure devotees are difficult to understand because they are willing to do, be, behave, dress, speak in whatever way is required to ensure that purity prevails, particularly purity and chastity to the spiritual master. Spiritual master is essential, not just for progress in spiritual life, not just to even come across spiritual life, but to achieve success. Essential. Okay, it's the most important thing. When something's the most important, it's essential, right? And that means we can, even do without all the rest. We see this in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna tells Arjuna this. We see this throughout Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada's purports, Acharya's purports. It's repeated everywhere, many, many times in many, many ways. So, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, in being a exalted Vaishnav and a wonderful spiritual master, the perfect spiritual master. And I'm speaking freely from the heart here, knowing we are in the company of those who wholeheartedly appreciate Maharaj. The best spiritual master, and he was so because he was a perfect disciple, a wonderful disciple, a chaste disciple of Srila Prabhupada. The best teachers are the best students. And I know we are commemorating his 20th anniversary of his disappearance, his 20th Dirabhav, and devotees are keen to know what it was like to serve him in the last 6 months as a caregiver, up close and personal. I know you're keen to hear that and keen to know how did he leave. But to understand how he left, I think it's really important to also look at how he lived. Because really how we live determines how we leave. And so I just want to share a few things, first of all, about how he lived. Being around him in his day-to-day life, in his day-to-day service as a disciple and serving in different capacities, you get to see different aspects of the spiritual master. And the spiritual master's relationship with every disciple is unique. And it's perfect. And the spiritual master loves every disciple equally, just expressed differently. And it's expressed differently because each disciple is different and the disciple's needs are different. Guru means heavy. Yeah, that heaviness is the purity of the spiritual master. The heaviness is the depth of love they have for their spiritual master and for Krishna. That heaviness has the ability, the permission, and actually the role of weighing down heavy on those things that we don't need. In our service to Guru and Krishna. Whether those are circumstances in our life, whether those are more subtle, unwanted things than others, in our thinking, in our feeling, in our willing, whether they're people in our lives. This is what heavy means. And that heaviness is expressed by the Guru verbally, through instruction, through an example, through their classes, through their presence. And it's activated in our lives by keeping connection, by following those instructions. So, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was a very dynamic and eclectic personality. He was like this from birth. If you read Black Lotus or speak to his family, his family came and stayed for some days during his final months. If you speak to them, and even disciples who've known him from his younger days and Prabhupada disciples who've known him from his younger days, you speak to his college friends, anybody, his whole life, there's one thing that's consistent. He was always eclectic, dynamic, loving, caring, and immersed in talking about God from when he was a small boy. It was really, really wonderful. Some of my observations, in how he lived, that exemplified what a dedicated disciple he was. was, so the year I got initiated, for me, initiation was a whirlwind, intense occasion. He'd arrived that morning at 4 o'clock in the morning from Brazil, and he was staying with us. And so we picked him up and went home. He rested for a very brief amount of time. It was Janmashtami, actually. And so we're all fasting Janmashtami. And Maharaj had this very austere habit of only eating once a day. And as many of you, I'm sure, know, he was an amazing dancer, enthusiastic in Kirtan. He would do that on one meal a day, and one full meal a day in his sannyas years. And when he was a brahmachari, that meal could just consisted of like carrots, dates, and yogurt. It was very austere, So it was Janmashtami, so he wasn't going to eat, and none of us were going to eat anything. So he arrived, rested a little while, and later on that day, we proceeded to Bhaktivedanta Manor, where there's usually a massive festival for Janmashtami. Tens of thousands of people come for the festival. We had the yagya, we had the initiation ceremony. It was beautiful, and we didn't get back till after midnight. And then I cooked, and we broke fast. And by the time the next day was Srila Prabhupada's appearance. So I think I slept for 1 hour. Maharaj must have slept for maybe 3 or 4 hours. And we went to the temple. Why am I giving you this background? So over the next few days, I was noticing how if I was up in the middle of the night, to do anything like go to the bathroom or anything, I noticed his room light was still on. You can see it from under the door. And he's such a regulated personality in the sense that from very young, he'd always chanted a greater number of rounds. He'd always woken up very early to do them, even before he went out on books. And so I was concerned, he's got his light on, it's so late and it's repetitively happening. So I think after 2-3 nights, I asked, Gurudev, you're going to bed very late. Is everything okay? And he said, yes, I'm just jet lagged from coming from Brazil. So it was fine. But then a few days later, it was still happening. So this time I asked again, I prompted and probed a little bit more strongly. And, sometimes the service requires this, that yes, we are ultimately the servant. We are ultimately the obedient servants of the spiritual master. But sometimes that service requires that we express the care more vocally. And still in the mood of service, not in the mood of I'm trying to lord it over you. Because it's really ultimately attitude that matters. And so I asked him, I said, Gurudev, it can't still be jet lag. It's been so many nights now. And he said, oh. And then his face changed and it softened. And he said, oh, do you want to know why I'm up? I said, yes. And he said, every morning when I wake up, I make a list of everything I want to do that day for Srila Prabhupada. And every night before I go to sleep, I tick off what I've done and I look at what I haven't done. And I stay awake until I've finished my list. Unless there's something, the only things I don't do are things that have to wait till the next day, the daytime. And for me, this was deeply enthusing, nourishing, but also taught me how to be a better disciple. I thought, oh, so this is how I can meditate on the spiritual master every day, all day. Take inventory. What have I done today? First of all, planning, what am I going to do today in the service of the spiritual master? And then taking inventory. What have I done? And not just on a daily basis. He was, this was one of the amazing things about him as well. He was very careful with time. Didn't waste any time. He always used every moment of 24 hours a day, managed to not just use it perfectly, but expand it into more than 24 hours by being so efficient. So he was always very mindful of time. So he would take inventory weekly, monthly, yearly, every few years, constantly checking in with his spiritual master, even though his spiritual master had physically been gone for so many decades. So anyway, that particular visit came to an end after a few more days, and he returned again a few months later. And this time when I was doing some of my services. I think I was taking some dictation or something for emails. And he looked down, he pulled down his glasses and he looked at me. He said, Chiti-sakti? I said, yes. Because you know that list I make for Srila Prabhupada? He said, do you want to help me with it? I was like, yes. She's like, of course I do. Yes, like, yeah, what can I do to help? What is there on that list that I can help to complete? And so he gave me some little task to go and do at the post office. And I was walking to the post office. It was a really hot day. I was walking to the post office and I was thinking, Gurudev's got me to do this little task. I do bigger things for him, Usually, like the services he gives me, like, I already was doing so much more this morning and yesterday, and I was like thinking, what? And I was really genuinely questioning. I couldn't make the connection, and then all of a sudden, within the heart, I was inspired. I understood. I really experienced and understood. Oh, hang on a minute. He's always been engaging me in fulfilling his list for Srila Prabhupada. I just didn't know it. Because this mood that the devotee has, a Vaishnav always has this mood that everything that comes to me, any resource, any person, any time, and this, like I said, he was like this with his very time conscious. How can I, facilitate serving Guru and Krishna through this? So any of us, no matter what our service is, whether it's known about, whether it's not known about, because let's face it, 90% of our devotional service is not observed by other people. Okay. And whatever we're doing to assist the spiritual master, know that that is assisting the spiritual master in serving their spiritual master. So he set this wonderful example of accountability. Accountability of Vaishnav is always accountable to who they take shelter of. And when we're accountable in this way, we can be fully absorbed. Devotional service is experiential in that it is something that we do it, we become it. We have attitudes that are devotional, but it requires strategy. Maharaj always had a strategy. He always was thinking, what does strategy mean? By design. He didn't just leave his feelings and or the whims of the feelings or the thoughts. He had strategy. He made a plan. Yeah, he applied his intelligence. Where am I gonna place my endeavor? So in this way, he was always taking inventory in the service of Srila Prabhupada. He was always very careful with his time. Both in health and in ill health, not a moment wasted. If we were ever in waiting rooms, he would, or driving in the car, or anywhere where he wasn't actively speaking about Krishna, hearing about Krishna, where he may have been in some sort of transition time. He would be reading, he would be hearing, or he'd be doing some service. Like he'd often be like in the car, he would answer emails, in waiting rooms. He would read or again answer emails while he on a prasad. Either somebody would read to him, or he would have he would on his prasad and he would read Krishna book or one of the shastras, or he'd be doing research for his preaching. So he was always forever, incessantly, unalloyed, uninterrupted, unalloyed and uninterrupted devotional service. It was uninterrupted. He never stopped. And I don't mean he never stopped as in like he was a workaholic or he was always busy. He was always busy serving, even if other people didn't see what he was doing while he was serving. That consciousness was always there. And another thing that's really important, I think, to understand about him is that he was for everyone. He was for everyone. When I say everyone, he lived by this principle that Prabhupada is bigger than ISKCON, that Krishna is bigger than just how we understand him, that Krishna is for everyone. So he would, and you can see this And one thing, you can see this in his preaching by the eclectic, broad range of people he preached to. He was equally loved by those in our community and people outside of our community. He was equally loved by those who were overlooked and the topmost in society. One thing, in serving in close proximity, so especially when doing his schedule, it was something I was made clear of, and aware of very, very early, was his attitude of everyone is equally important to Krishna. He lived by that. So in doing his scheduling, I'd heard from other secretaries and personal servants that one of the challenges of serving the spiritual master is that everybody wants their time. And one of the things you have to do is be chaste and protective of the guru's time, and making sure that it is not wasted and it is appropriately allocated. At the same time, taking care of the relationships between those who are asking for time with Maharaj, whether they're disciples or not disciples, and Maharaj himself, that relationship is not burdened in case they can't see or don't get that darshan. So, and one of the challenges they had was that often VIPs, again within the community and outside, if they ask for last minute time with the guru, often people get cancelled, and people don't like being cancelled. Okay. So I had this one experience where, I think it was probably only like the first or second time that I was his secretary. So it was very early on. I'd done his schedule. It was all sorted. He was always very planned because he was so good with time. It was very easy to do the secretarial service because he was very good at letting you know how to use the time and sticking to what the boundaries were. So this one time, the schedule's full, it's done, it's sorted. And got a call from a VIP, senior devotee, saying, look, we're having this special lunch or dinner. We want to have Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And so can you cancel whatever is in his diary for the rest of today, or I think it was the next day, and, have this arranged. I was like, okay, I'll check with him. So I spoke to him, and and you know who was in his diary that day for the afternoon? No one that anybody knew. Just an ordinary devotee, didn't have any position. They just didn't do any big service, but they dedicated their life to Krishna consciousness. And he didn't even ask me, who is it this afternoon? He said, no. He goes, my schedule's done, right? I said, yes. And he goes, okay. He said, respectfully decline and just tell them that my schedule is actually already full. And before I could even ask him, don't you want to know who's asking and who's already in your diary? He actually said, I'm here for the nobody. I'm here for the everybody. I'm here for anyone and everyone. He said, and especially those who are overlooked, because everyone is important to Krishna. And he says, so if my schedule is done, my schedule is done. He said, unless you feel that there's some really pressing need that I need to change it, he said, you don't need to bring these kinds of things to me. He said, if somebody asks on my schedule, you just tell them my schedule is done, and politely decline and offer my obeisances and tell them that I will see them the next time I come, and they should try and book in time a little bit sooner. So it was really very, very touching to see that to him, it made no difference whether the person he's seeing is a big person or a small person in the world's eyes. They're a person. It was so personal. It was so, and this is one of the reasons I could see even devotees who were rejecting Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Prabhupada disciples, they were walking away. He got letters at in his final months, he was getting letters from his godbrothers and godsisters who were writing saying, after Srila Prabhupada left, I walked away from ISKCON. I haven't set foot in a temple for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years like this. But after hearing about how you're departing, today I set foot in the temple again for the first time. Because he really had this mood of, I accept you, I love you. This principle of You shouldn't judge a Vaishnav by their body, their karma, their varna, their ashram, all of these things, their physical features. He lived by that. He lived by that. He lived it. He walked his talk. He's really powerful in walking his talk, you know. And equally, there's children who were born in Krishna consciousness, but especially back in the 90s, we had a lot of challenges there because those children were becoming adults and they were speaking up, and it really broke his heart that those souls who were taking birth in Lord Chaitanya's movement were turning away. Those children who were becoming adults wept like babies when Guru Maharaj was leaving, because out of so many teachers, they trusted him, gave them time. I saw him when we'd travel, when he was in good health. They'd pack into a room, all of them, you know, in their kuli melas, and, you know, they'd have darshan with Maharaj, and they'd open up, they'd open their hearts, they'd cry, they'd laugh, and he'd hear them out. He'd hear them out. He empathized with them, he felt for them, and he worked really hard to deal with the healing that people needed to do after the challenges of being mistreated by the very same people who should be protecting them. He was often taking care of those souls whose gurus had unfortunately stepped away or fallen away or struggled with following their own principles. And again, he was loved by them. So he was extremely loved, for he loved others. And because he loved so deeply, he could go anywhere and give Krishna consciousness. He could go and pioneer, you know, dynamic projects which build bridges to people who would never hear about Krishna otherwise, whether it was the youth, whether it was politicians, whether it was celebrities, you know. Many of you know that the influence he had with personalities like Muhammad Ali, Nelson Mandela. These are deeply powerful and respected people. But when a respected person respects someone, you know that that person must be even greater. Yes. So he was for everyone and the nobody and the most important. And he would also go into the most inaccessible and dangerous places to preach. You know, many of you here are disciples of some of my wonderful godbrothers like Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He was found in these dangerous places by Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, where the politics was against devotional service, where the culture was very austere and difficult. So Maharaj was he lived with fierce determination and dedication to Lord Chaitanya's movement, with a heart full of love. His teachings were broad and deep. Because he reached a wide audience, his teachings were broad. As in, you look at his books, right? There's a Spiritual Warrior series, which is really just taking issues of modern life and explaining them, and explaining how transcendental knowledge and transcendental life can solve all of these things, but in a very practical way. He goes deep in the beggar books, the Reflections on Sacred Teachings books, in terms of really deeply analyzing and opening up various esoteric aspects of bhakti. He's got the leadership books, you know, to reach those people who set the vision and set strategy for society. So we see that how he lived and how he taught and what he taught were synonymous. He had so many preaching areas: leadership, personal development, the mind, parapsychology, metaphysics, new age, youth. He pretty much covered everything and anything. You know, he could give Krishna to anyone. Give Krishna to anyone. I mean, he was amazing. It was so exciting spending time with Gurudev, you know, because You just didn't know where you were going to go next and what you were going to hear about, or even more surprising, like how he was going to answer about something. Sometimes people would ask him the wildest stuff, and he always had the most wicked answers. Like they were just brilliant, just the most brilliant answers. You couldn't phase him. You couldn't phase him. It didn't matter how audacious someone's question was, he just knew. He knew. And sometimes all he did was smile. And that person would just melt. And then he was like this right until the end, even in his very final weeks when he was completely bedbound. The hospice nurse, she would come and visit. And sometimes she would just spontaneously come and visit. And she would get quite overwhelmed when she'd see him, because one thing about Maharaj is he was still so beautiful, even when his body was emaciated, It was very sad to see his, arms and everything become wasted, but he had this glow about him, and he still had that huge smile. And she said to him, one time when she came, she said, normally when I go visit people in their final days, I'm there to put a smile on their face. She said, but when I come to see you, she said, I just see you and it puts the biggest smile on my face. So he had this glow, this effulgence. I remember one of the times that I was reading to him towards the end, I just stopped because I was like looking at us thinking, wow, he just looks like a little, even though I can physically see with my eyes that his body is physically, emaciated. He looks externally like a cancer patient, right? But all I see is this glowing boy. And I just stopped reading. I was looking and said, Shakti, what are you doing? You look like you just look so young and you're glowing. I just don't understand because your body's so emaciated. And he smiled and he said, yes. He said, because, my soul nature is coming through much more. And so as the time comes nearer and nearer, more and more of it will come through until the body can't handle it anymore, and then I'll leave. I was like, wow, it's like amazing. This is the thing, that's the thing with Maharaj. He left and he lived very openly. He was so open. If you read like the beggar books, those are his heart, his absolute outpouring of his heart to Guru and Krishna. Those prayers, they're not, oh, I'm going to write a prayer for publication. Oh, I'm going to write some nice poetry that might inspire other people. No, he would go to the forest and weep and cry and scream and write. After he wrote Beggar 4, and Beggar 4 was his prayers going through the whole cancer journey, we tried to get him to record it. And so we could have an audio rendition of him speaking his prayers. I think we tried 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 different prayers for him to start with. He would get 2-3 sentences into it and he would break down. And he said, you'll need to do the audio recording of this. He said, because as you've seen, because these are literally my heartfelt prayers, and I'm in the midst of this process now, I feel everything I'm reading. And so because I feel it, I can't get past the first few words because I know what these prayers mean to me. So he was always very open. So even his passing, that whole journey from the time he was diagnosed in the summer of 2004 to the time he left in the summer of 2005, and including the prayer he made prior to his diagnosis, all very open, very open. We got an up close and personal look at what the journey of the Vaishnav is as they are leaving. And not only that, wasn't just open, he put it into slow motion for us. He didn't have to take that much time. He didn't need to stay for that much time. He stayed extra so that he could take on more of the karmic burden. He stayed extra so we could see step by step what the consciousness is and what the challenges are and how to overcome those challenges. There were many times, especially in those last few months, where he could have just left. The Vishnu Dutas came. They came to take him and he could have left. He turned them away, saying, I'm not ready yet. There's more I want to do for the devotees. He could have left with a lot less pain, in a lot stronger physical health, without enduring the full-on symptoms of pain and deterioration. And because, you know, when you're in the advanced stages of cancer, not just the body breaks down, you know, in terms of the tumors, etc., but then your bones are also becoming more fragile, the mind, the brain, all of those things. And it was really powerful because one of the things he was sharing about is that how when, you know, normally when a devotee is leaving their body, or anybody is leaving their body, the body dies and the mind, the false ego, the intelligence, they don't put up so much of a fight because they're like, it's okay, we're getting another body, no problem, right? But when it's time to go back, the mind, body, ego, so your subtle body realizes, uh-oh, this is our final time. There's going to be no more existence for us now. This person's going back. And he says, so Maya Devi, through the mind and intelligence and false ego, lays out all the cards for you. Every option you have in all of material creation, she offers you anything and everything you could possibly want, no matter how subtle the desire is. And he said, you have to say no to every single thing to receive the grace of the spiritual master offering you Prema Bhakti. So he was very open in how he lived, in what he taught, and how he left. Because what he taught us, I mean, he taught us so many different things. The things that really stand out is that he would really teach about the qualities of a Vaishnava, and he lived them: forgiveness, compassion, kindness, honesty. His openness was part of his honesty. You know, he was so forgiving. He had so much foresight because he really deeply loved people. You know, when you love someone, you don't let them trip because you notice what they're going to trip on before they do. Yes, right? Think about, especially those of you who are parents, or all of you, you must have someone in your life that you really, really deeply love. You are looking out for their obstacles and blocks and attackers long before they are. Right? All of us have mothers. We'll have someone who cares about us. We may find it frustrating that even when you're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old and you've got your own life and your own children, they still ask you, have you eaten? Have you slept? You know, or be careful of this. And one has to really see this person really just loves me. They're telling me to be careful, not because they think I'm incompetent. They're telling me to be careful because they care so much. So he had this amazing foresight. He loved everyone so much. He could see what the planet was going to encounter, what the devotee community was going to encounter in terms of challenges. And so he didn't just teach for what people needed now. He taught for what people will need in the future. And it's really amazing. You read some of the books, and especially the books like Spiritual Warrior. What he says in there, sometimes, hang on a minute, you wrote these books like 25 years ago. But what you're saying is describing what's happening right now. It's like you had a crystal ball, a transcendental crystal ball, to give us solutions. And you know, this is the thing, because he had so much foresight, he was misunderstood. He was misunderstood a lot. His teachings were misunderstood a lot. And now, this is the thing about a loving person. They're not just loved the time that they're alive. They're loved even in the future. So many devotees. I mean, I look at most people in this room, Zoom room right now, most of you never met him. Right? Most of you here never met him. And most people that encounter who are effusive about their love and affection for him never met him, but they read his books and they hear about him. When they hear about him and they read his books, they're like, who is this? And how does such a person exist in this world? You know, who is this personality? Like, it's not actually humanly possible to be so many almost contradictory things. He was a sadhu and he was a celebrity. You know, it was like, he was renounced and he had everything. You know, he was cool and saintly. What? It's just amazing. I mean, he was like a king, even though he was a sannyasi. He really was. So when you walk next to him, I was like, hey, you know, you have to look sharp. And he was everything. Everything had to be perfect for Guru and Krishna. I remember one time, oh my God, you know, as devotees, we sometimes get embroiled in this false humility and false renunciation thing. So I'd been brought up being accustomed to always dressing sharply and well. Okay. And even in my profession, etc., you know, you've got to look sharp. And so I always did with Gurudev generally. But then in those final few months, I had this foolish foolish understanding that renunciation was, or dressing simply was, it would manifested in some carelessness. You know, there was one day I just put on a gopi dress, which I think probably wasn't particularly well ironed, which wasn't like me, you know. And I put on trainers, which again wasn't like me. I normally had proper shoes. And the reason I had trainers on was because my shoes had gotten stolen. So anyway, we were going to the hospital, and I was often either the kind of medical kind of communicator, or I would say I'm his daughter, because, you know, to get confidential information, you have to sometimes be a relative. And there were just many pastimes, just even around that. I will share a couple of them. So anyway, we were in the waiting area, and he would notice everything. You know, it's amazing. He was in so much pain. He had so many things going on in his body, but he would notice everything. So I was sitting there, and I noticed his eyes were looking at my feet. So I very quickly tucked my feet under the chair. I was like, uh-oh. he's gonna say, "It's Citi-sakti." He goes, "That's it." That day I was wearing a sari with trainers. I hadn't put on the crumpled gopi suit yet. That was another day. I tucked it underneath. It's Citi-sakti. What have you got on your feet? So, because, you know, sneakers and sari, they don't go. And I said, "Gurudev, my shoes got stolen." He looked at me like, don't even use that as an excuse. He said, "So buy another pair," like this. I was like, oh my God, I was dying. I was dying. And I was also really happy as well, because, oh my God, everything he just cares about so much. So anyway, the next morning, actually that day, when he got back, he said, "Tomorrow," he said, you don't show me your face until you've got proper shoes." And he phoned up a devotee, I think, on the farm, and he said, "Do you have a car?" And they said, "Yes." And he said, "You pick Citi-sakti up, you take her to the store, and you make her buy shoes, and don't bring her to me until she's got a pair of shoes." So that was heavy. And then a couple of days later, I think, again, a few days later, I put on a crumpled gopi suit. Again, like I said, that wasn't like me. Put on gopi suit, and, you know, I was like, la-di-da-di-da. So I was walking along, you know, in the hospital. We were in the hospital again. And he was behind, like somebody was pushing a Gurudev in the wheelchair. And I was, you know, la-di-da-di-da, walking to the lift. Got into the lift, and I was there thinking, yes, look at me. I look like a devotee in my crumpled gopi suit. And we got into the lift, and Gurudev's literally like, he looks me up and down, and he did not look happy. He goes, "Citi-sakti, what are you wearing?" I didn't even bother explaining myself. So I was like, okay. So, "What are you wearing?" I just looked down. Okay, let me hear what you say. Because you look shabby. Because you look shabby, boy. Because you're a doctor. Because they see you as a professional. He goes, "And you're my daughter." He goes, "And, you know, you're a caregiver." He goes, "You know, because they're going to look at you and they're just going to see this disheveled person." He goes, "You're not representing me or your profession very well." He goes, "What happened to your iron saris?" And all? He goes, "I don't want to see this ever again." And then when we got in the car, he said, "You know, we constantly represent Guru and Krishna, constantly." So you must be very aware of the way you speak, the way you dress, every single thing, because you are always representing the spiritual master Krishna, always. And he lived like that. There wasn't a time he didn't look polished. Never. He never looked unpolished. He never carried himself in a slovenly fashion. His presence was polished, you know? So in in this way, and he explained, he goes, you know, when you serve the, you know, every disciple is a flower that the spiritual master puts on a garland to offer their spiritual master. And he was saying one time, he said, you know, I love all of my disciples. And I had this, so my time with him was split into chapters, 3 chapters. The first chapter was like 6 weeks. It was the chapter of, he intensely overwhelmed me with so much affection, so many compliments. I had no shadow, there was no shadow of a doubt in my mind that he loved me. In fact, I got puffed up. I thought I was his favorite disciple. He smashed that very quickly. In the next chapter, spent 6 weeks completely smashing me, you know, correcting every single thing from, like I said, the pleats in my sari, to my shoes, to my hair, to the way I spoke. Even told me that I must carry a handkerchief because it's unladylike like to sniff and it's unrefined. I mean, just to give some background, a lot of the instructions that he gave me was about using my profession to preach in the media and with academics and leaders, etc. So you've got to be refined, right? You've got to represent properly. We have a high-class philosophy, so we dress like high-class people. And so in that 6 weeks, there was a lot of heaviness. And then in the last 6 weeks, when he went into Nirjan Bhajan, then again, the sweetness returned, but it was less less interaction. So there was this molding that was taking place, this refinement was sometimes came with a lot of heaviness, to a point where when I'd go in with my computer, he would always say, in that, especially in that 6 weeks, Citi-sakti, bring your box of tissues. Because he knew I was going to cry. Because he knew the content of what we were sharing was going to make me cry, or how heavy he was going to get with me was going to make me cry. And one of those times he said, you know, Citi-sakti, so this every disciple is dear to the spiritual master. Every disciple is a flower the spiritual master offers on a garland to his spiritual master or her spiritual master. He said, but he said, when one is serving personally, you are literally the body of the spiritual master. He said, so I treat you the way I would treat myself. So if I'm harsh and heavy with you, know that that is how I treat myself, how I treat my own body. He said, so don't take it to heart so much. I'm sharing this with you because, you know, some of you here will have different dynamics with your spiritual master, and being in the spiritual masters association is extremely purifying, because when we are in the close proximity of any exalted Vaishnava, their potency, their purity is like a razor blade. It's sharp. Okay. Remember, sharp things can make cuts that are there for our healing. They can cut out the heaviness in a healing way. Okay. But if we misuse it, if we don't behave properly, then it can hurt us. That very same cut can hurt us. I remember 8 weeks into being with him, you know, I traveled with him before and had his close association before many times, but for no more than a couple of weeks at a time. So this was the longest period in his final months. That was there 24/7, you know. And after about 8 weeks into it, he sat a few of us down. He said, you know, it's really easy. And I have a, you know, enthusiastic, bubbly nature, and it was on steroids in my 20s. So, you know, it was like, it was really hype then. And so it was very obvious when I was excited or enthusiastic about doing something. You know, I would skip, jump, I would run up 2 steps at a time to run to him if he needed anything, you know. And so he was saying, you know, it's very easy to be enthusiastic when serving the spiritual master. closely for a few weeks. He said, but after a couple of months, he said, then the mind and the false ego start to kick off. And all of the same challenges that we maybe have with other people, we start to have with the spiritual master. The mind and false ego make you forget that this is the guru, that this is not an ordinary person. And the very same things that you sought inspiration in start to become triggers to bring out your own anarthas. So it's we even hear from Srila Prabhupada's disciples that many of them struggled. In fact, many of his personal servants actually left. I was grateful that he was explaining this, because whilst the heart was joyful that there was all this heaviness and this purification and this polishing going on, the mind and false ego, of course, they're being broken down to be rebuilt, right? It's a spiritual boot camp, serving the spiritual master for any prolonged period of time. Spiritual master, it's just like an army boot camp. You get broken down to be rebuilt again. I still remember the day that the heavy instruction started. Had a dream that night, and I was a busybody. I could do loads of things at the same time, loads of services at the same time, and be really efficient and stuff. And I was proud of it. I thrived on it, and it disturbed others. And at this pivotal point, Gurudev came in my dream and he said, so Citi-sakti, it's really wonderful that you do so many things. And Maharaj had this ability. He would very voluntarily and consciously come in disciples' dreams and know what he was saying, to a point where you could carry on the conversation in waking hours. He said, so it's very nice to do all these things, because it's even better if you're a nice Vaishnavi. So are you going to do that, or do I need to do that for you? I was like, well, hang on a minute. I'm about to get up and start serving. I'm not going to be able to change in 1 hour. It's like, how am I going to become a nice Vaishnavi in 1 hour? So I was just, I resigned myself. Can you do it? That was one of my requests as well when I arrived. I said, Gurudev, can you just do what you can when I'm here to mold me, to shape me? So anyway, from that day, every ability that I had, honestly, one by one, even the most basic things that I didn't even have to think about doing, I lost those abilities. It was almost like he created situations where, anything you have, which is already yours, or anything you've been empowered with, you're not going to have that ability anymore, so that I can show you what a nonsense you actually are. And it was challenging, but it was glorious. It was amazing. It was amazing. And one of the things I learned was to help me I don't want to forget that this is my spiritual master, because there was two things. One is the heaviness that was there, but the other thing was the nature of the service as being a caregiver is you are, and especially because my background is medical, right? I was often sharing or giving some recommendation, some advice. One doesn't want to lose this thing that just because my service is to tell you something, that doesn't mean that I stop taking instruction from you. That doesn't mean you're not my spiritual master. So I don't want to forget that. So I would, even though we'd be in the same space and time, I started writing him letters. Even though I was with him 24/7, even though my room was underneath his room, or, because there was a few of us in the house, I still wrote letters. Sometimes he'd be sitting across the room on the sofa, and I'd sit in the corner and write him a letter. I did this so I'd never forget that this is my spiritual master and I'm always his servant. Because one of the things I really realized is that if after personal service, we can't understand that physical proximity has got absolutely nothing to do with the closeness of the guru and disciple, then there's personal services on one level we've not really learned. Because there were times when, and if I look at my whole Krishna conscious journey, there were times, and there have been times where Gurudev's in another planetary system or the other side of the planet, and I feel like he's right by my side, right in my heart, nowhere else. And there were times when I was literally by his feet physically, okay? And it felt like he was a million miles away. Why? Because my consciousness wasn't aligned. So We are never far away from Guru and Krishna. It is all a matter of consciousness. Everything that the spiritual master says, even if it's a joke, is either an instruction or a test. Even when we are being engaged in seemingly meeting the needs of the spiritual master, we need that more than the spiritual master does. Do you know how inconvenient it is to have other people look after you? Especially if you're competent. If you're a competent person and you can just do it anyway, and you hand over aspects of your personal care or your offering to your spiritual master to other people so that they can grow, it is austere. It is austere. You really need to love those people. He loved us, and he loves us, and he loves all of you, because through his books, through what he shares in his books, he is giving his heart. When we imbibe what's in his heart, he never leaves us. He's always by our sides. I mean, there's devotees here, I have no doubt, and I know for a fact there are devotees here who, without having ever met him, you feel protected by him. Without having ever met him, you dream of him. Without ever having met him, you somehow understand him. So many things happen in those last few months. I mean, like I said, we can talk for hours about what happened, his example, the mystical things that happen, how he orchestrated. That's it. That's the other thing he shared when he said, you know, the mind and false ego, they kick up a fuss and you stop seeing the spiritual master. You know, it can be dangerous because you can stop seeing the spiritual master for who they are. He also said, normally when you're serving with the spiritual master closely, there's a lot of purification, because the last thing, you know, a criminal wants to see is the police. So all the criminals in our mind, they're like, uh-oh, you know, we're having to spend time with this personality who's going to cut us out. But he said, because I'm leaving, and because of my physical condition, your purification will come from each other, a lot of it. I kid you not. I mean, I love the other caregivers dearly. I love all of my God family dearly, but these particular personalities, love them dearly. I think if you ever put us in a room together, we will just very quickly find our rhythm again. But we saw each other's ugly side. That was the purification. I think that service brought out the best in all of us, but also the absolute worst in all of us. Many reasons. Some of them were biopsychosocial, you know, like we were exhausted. That does things. It brings up our weaknesses, right? You squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. You stress someone, you squeeze them, what's in there comes out, the good and the bad and the ugly. And we also saw each other's deep love for our spiritual master. So you will see this, you know, when you're serving in close proximity with someone, not just the spiritual master is a vehicle for purification, but so are the people that we're serving with. We look at Maharaj's principles of community building, which was so much at the heart of what he taught. He knew that the dynamics of our community had to be like the dynamics of Goloka Vrindavan. We have to become like the residents of Goloka Vrindavan to be qualified to go back. And so all these conflicts we have are to weed out the things that are stopping us from interacting like that. His community building also had foresight. He wasn't just interested in community building for the whole community, but especially, you know, his own disciples. He knew the weaknesses that the guru-disciple relationship can have once the spiritual master leaves. He saw this even in his own God family, right? Isolation, becoming disconnected from the spiritual master's teachings, these different things. And so this concept of disciple meetings was something that he was a pioneer. He pioneered a lot of things. Well, not just big projects and bridge preaching, but he pioneered a lot of different ways of new ways of doing things in our movement that were for the strengthening of people's bhakti. And one of them was disciple meetings. He, long before he even knew he was going to leave, because there was a period of time he thought he was even going to live for a long time. his instruction was that in every country and city where there's disciples, we should have regular disciple meetings and come together and share our struggles, our celebrations, and the teachings of the spiritual master. So in England, you know, we've been having these disciple meetings since 1999. And our God family here is not so big. So it's very noticeable when people don't turn up. It's noticeable if there's challenges, but equally when it's becoming sweet, it's also very noticeable. So Gurudev, you know, come on, England, like in English feel like we're the center of the world, right? So every flight passes through England. It's easy to come through. So Gurudev actually, through a period of time, I remember the year I got initiated, in that 12-month period, he came through London 3 times. It was amazing. We got to see him 3 times in a year. It was amazing. It was fabulous. But he would ask for a report after every disciple meeting. So I would send a report of what we discussed, who turned up, who wasn't able to make it, etc. And I remember back in 2001, he had been very clear, very heavy that, you know, I want you to meet regularly. The way you meet, the way you show up together is going to be so important for your future Krishna consciousness and for your relationship with me, the spiritual master. So anyway, report sent. So so I was about to go to my first Vrindavan Yatra with Radha Maharaj. So this was back in 2001. And the day before I left, I sent Gurudev our latest report, and 4 disciples had turned up for the disciple meeting. And this is just a few weeks after he'd physically left London and told us how important disciple meetings were. When I got to Vrindavan, and this was the days of wired internet, so I had to go to an internet cafe to pick up his email because I knew he would have responded. So he was very on top of communication. I was shocked to see a very long email in my inbox, but I was shocked by the opening. I'm going to read this email to you because
Yes, Mataji.
Yes.
Yes.
This email is not just for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj disciples. I think this email is a message to anybody who takes their spiritual life seriously and wants to work in the spirit of cooperation. He said, "Dear devotees, brackets UK disciples." Okay, he wanted to make it clear he was really speaking to us. "Please accept my blessings. All glories to ISKCON founder Acarya Srila Prabhupada." This "please accept my blessings" is very powerful. He's saying, I'm always on your side. Always on your side. Know that whatever I say to you is for your benefit. Now, this was the thing that nearly made me fall off the stool in the internet cafe, quite literally. In general, you are all pretty disgusting. No disciple wants to hear that. In general, you are all pretty disgusting. I'm shocked to hear that only 4 disciples came to the last disciple meeting. How do you consider yourselves to be disciples when you can't follow a simple order of the spiritual master? If you only want to come together when the guru comes around, this is not devotional service. This is not a spiritual family, and this is not a culture of devotion. Such activity is cultish. I'm not interested in you coming to see my body. Even your coming to hear me speak is secondary. The important thing is what you do after I leave and how you internalize the message. I'm not interested in having disciples who are not ready to create a family. When you just have the child and a father, that is not a wholesome family. In every country where I have disciples, they are understanding the importance of coming together to support each other, to have open, compassionate communication, and to reflect and brainstorm on the spiritual master's mission. But most of you are so caught up in your own distractions that you have no time to follow through on the spiritual master's desires. Now, this was the double whammy heavy blow. Until I hear that you are all taking these disciple meetings seriously, I have no desire to come back to England just to be with a bunch of hypocrites. Don't you hear and see what is going on within the world? This is a time that there should be greater quality association on all levels. I have, for instance, disciples and aspiring disciples in countries like Croatia, Russia, Mexico, and Africa, where disciples live so far apart, but they still struggle like anything to be in touch with each other and to regularly meet. All the meetings are planned in advance, so in most cases, unless there is an emergency, you should all be able to meet. So until I see that you are all taking my instructions seriously, coming to the meetings, working together, brainstorming on various projects, and genuinely having compassionate, caring, quality association, I will route my tickets in such a way that I will bypass England. I want to create leaders, spiritual warriors who form strong teamships, not selfish so-called devotees who are prone to see everyone's faults except their own and who are too lazy, too impersonal, and too self-centered to get involved in trying to improve things. Only a short time ago, you all honored the passing of Tribhuvanath. We all have to pass. Therefore, we want to leave this world victoriously. That means we must become real devotees. Yours in Srila Prabhupada's service, with love, Bhakti Swami. Now, there was another point, another email I received from him the year before he left. And again, this was in response to another report. And this was to do with, not just attendance, but timeliness. We have Indian culture and devotional culture, where being late is sadly acceptable, even though we know cleanliness and timeliness are the cornerstones of deity worship, right? We still seem to make a joke out of the fact that we show up late to things. And I'm going to just read an excerpt of a reply from him. He says, I want you to convince the devotees to be timely. Otherwise, fewer devotees will come to the meetings. When people come late to a meeting, it is inauspicious. I never thought of it as inauspicious. It's inauspicious. It's disrespectful to those who come on time and a sign of poor consciousness. In one sense, that makes sense, right? Because at Bhav, a person doesn't waste any time. They're very time conscious. Like I said, Maharaj was very, very time conscious. He saw everything as Krishna's energy. He was very particular about everything. So the opposite then is true. If we're not careful with our time, then it shows that, we really don't see Krishna as time or as time belonging to Krishna. He ends with, the way things start off has a great impact with the way they develop. So if we're late for meetings, know that our project will also develop late. Know that it will be met with inauspiciousness and delays and stagnation. I was a bit worried when I started. I was thinking, gosh, I hope I share enough. I hope I'm not going to run out of things to say. I'm now thinking, I've got so much more to tell you. There's so many pastimes and there's so many different things I could share with you, both in terms of the way he lived and the way he left. So many sweet, sweet, sweet pastimes, so many magical interactions. But we are down to our last 5 minutes, and I am also going to have to start another Sangha in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to take one question because I've shared so many things. Does anybody have one question that I can just answer quickly and close with before we go?
Hare Krishna Mataji. If devotees have any question, one question can be taken. Before that, I would like to share something to Mataji.
Sure.
That it looks like we have so much to hear from you. I'm getting some experiences because these 2 sessions will not be enough, not even 4, 5, 6. What we will do, we would like to hear systematically, like you said, for a few months, it took for you 9 to 12 months for initiation, when you met first, then many, many things. After that, will come at the end of Srila Bhakti life. And that also you are dividing into 3 parts, 6 weeks, like that. So we would like to hear it very systematically, because every word of yours is very important, not for all of us, for the whole world, the devotees to come in future. So that is what I wanted to say. So we will go very nicely, peacefully, no problem. Every month, whenever you will have time, and Sakshi Mataji will be able to coordinate, you all are ready. we will always continuing these sessions unending, as you have said. So now with that, one question for today's.
Can I just reply to that first?
Yes.
So you know, there are so many exalted souls in our God family. I'm a nobody. I'm very junior. There's so many devotees who are so senior to me. They have even more to share. You know, they have even more to share. So please, 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 you know, avail yourself of their association.
Yes.
All of us can do so many sessions. I know you want to hear systematically. I will liaise with Shakshi in terms of timings and things as well, because I wonder if you're willing to have these sessions perhaps at a different time as well, or maybe a different day or something as well, some of them, or whether it has to only be at this time. I'm at your service, but equally I do want to alert you to the fact that there are very many more exalted souls who can share even more nectar. So please don't disable yourself by having someone like me here too often. Please do connect with those personalities too. Okay.
Yeah. So Mataji, what is our plan? Our plan is to hear from so many of God brothers and God sisters of yours. And we have also made the list, and Sakshi Mataji is going to have these sessions every month for many years to come.
Oh, great. Oh, that's brilliant. I thought you were just doing it for a few weeks before Maharaj's Tirtha.
No.
So it's for many years
No.
to come. Then yes, I'm happy to come back whenever. That's fine.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, how are we going to do so many before June 27th? Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
So that is our plan. We are planning to do twice a month, so that we all can have time and we can also digest and
Yes.
apply in our life. So we will do twice a month these sessions. So we started with His Grace Mahajan Prabhu.
Yes.
So we completed 2 sessions last month, and then we came to you. After that, we have big list of devotees from all around the world.
Okay.
From Africa, from Europe, from America, from
Amazing.
Russia.
Amazing. That's wonderful. Okay,
So,
I'm going to have to go in 2 minutes. So a very brief, short question, and then I will see you next Saturday.
yes. So, any devotee have one question to ask regarding this?
If there isn't, that's okay. Sometimes when you hear these pastimes and there's no questions, you just want to hear. And that's okay.
Yeah,
because I also, okay. Preeti Mai, Hare Krishna. Nice to see you again.
Same here, Mataji. I was so enthused when I saw you, and I was just remembering Mayapur. So not a question, but just I wanted to share my heart. I was again, going through a very troubling time. As you said, the enemies are there when you serve the spiritual master to knock you down. So this session was really so very helpful. And again, Param Gurudev came to hold me back from whatever difficult phase I was going through. And I couldn't have imagined anything in this whole earth to support me this time. So I really felt very helped by this endeavor of everybody arranging and you coming and speaking. So I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for, always touching our hearts. My husband was just here and he was saying that just hearing Mataji is so calming and so assuring, and it's giving us some strength to reflect back and serve in the spirit of a spiritual warrior. So I just wanted to express my gratitude, Mataji. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It is one of the best things in the world to be able to glorify the spiritual master, and to find devotees who relish hearing those pastimes is a great gift to me, and it reminds me of my spiritual master's expectations of me and how I can be a better servant. So thank you for your enthusiasm, your sincere hearing, and your service as well, because whoever you're all connected to and serving them, know that we're all connected. There's somehow or another we are all connected. We're all on the same side. So I will take your leave, and I will see you next week. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Bhakti Swami Maharaj ki jai. Nitai Gopram.
Hare Grace Shakti Mataji ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
We thank all the wonderful devotees for connecting us, and we will eagerly wait for everyone next week. That is 24th. Yes, 24th of May, 2 o'clock. We will again meet to hear from Mataji. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Sakshi Mataji, for arranging very nicely, coordinating everything.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
And after these two sessions, we can invite another devotee. Then we can switch to Mataji. Like this, we can have alternate devotees. Okay, Hare Krishna.